Hello again, YouTube. Welcome back to PsychRockCentral, where psych rock music lives on. Today we're going to be looking at King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard's Nonagon Infinity, released in 2016. I don't really need to go over the band too much, because they're a legendary Australian psych or garage or noise or blues, a lot of different instrumentation, a legendary band formed in 2010. They're very, very popular with new school psychedelic rock musicians and listeners for this decade and the previous 2010s. They're known for their rapidly shifting musical styles, from blues rock to lo-fi garage rock to boogie rock and thrash metal, which some of their newer albums are definitely embracing a lot more. Ranked number 21 in a list of the hardest working musicians back in 2019 for releasing 5 studio albums in 2017 alone. The band is highly prolific, starting producing and creating and uploading music as far back as 2012. And they have over dozens, like 24, I think, studio albums in 2023. So a lot of music to go over for psychedelic rock, for blues rock on this channel. So expect to see these guys quite often. So going over the music, I'm just going to be frank here. I'm not a huge fan of Nonagon Infinity. There are a few aspects that I don't really appreciate. I'm someone who definitely prefers their original, earlier stuff like 12 Bar Brews and I'm in Your Mind Fuzz, but let's just go over some of my criticism. It's got the intentional lo-fi garage rock sound, which to many people isn't a bad thing at all. And it actually accentuates some tracks such as Robot Stop and Evil Death Roll, but for me it tends to take away from the music itself. I much prefer the cleaner but a lot more distorted sound of 12 Bar Brews, so you can imagine my shock that when I started listening to this album, it felt more like, it was just intentionally lo-fi. I had to turn up my volume to the same, to just hear the same amount of shit I was going to hear in 12 Bar Brews anyways. I think the ideas tend to go underdeveloped, and there's a lot of direct copying to other musicians. Tracks such as Mr. Beat, Wah Wah, and Invisible Face have songwriting that sounds copied from other genres. Namely like post-rock from Godspeed You or Dirty 3, blues rock, garage rock, even space rock. They just feel more like carbon copies of bands that have already done this type of stuff better. But I'd say, I mentioned before, Evil Death Roll was a good track that extenuated the lo-fi garage rock sound, and it is my favorite track, being one of the longer cuts on here. It definitely feels like it's 7 minutes well worth it, rather than a lot of the tracks here which feel more like 5 to 10 wasted minutes. So there's not much I really need to say on Evil Death Roll. I think it's my favorite. There's a couple of other tracks I like here, but it tends to really boil down to this one being the one I would probably come back to. Closing thoughts. I'm personally not a fan of the lo-fi sound. I think it sounds kind of cheap. The garage rock influence don't really excite me as a fan of the more underground psych rock. Even some of the classic stuff, which I know isn't necessarily underground. But I just prefer the classic sound, or maybe even the neo-psychedelia sound, to this intentional, bad-sounding garage rock. Songwriting is more anachronistic, and I think many tracks sound heavily inspired by the greatest psychedelic rock artists, and that's in this album's benefit. However, the lack of ingenuity disappoints me on a more personal, intrinsic level. The better songs were created for their early albums, especially 12 Bar Brews, and overall it really lacks a real reason to exist among their catalog. It just feels like another line of songs to produce onto an album that just gets shelved among all their other releases. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to give this one a 5 out of 10. Not bad, in the sense that I don't ever want to listen to it again, but I probably won't anyway, because it doesn't excite me as a psych rock fan. But I know that if you enjoyed this album, that's fine. If you enjoyed this review, I'd like to thank you for watching. The blog post for this is already up on PsychRockCentral, and you can check out the full in-depth review on Rate Your Music as well. So I'd like to thank you for watching. Peace out.